Hello and welcome to another Battle Games in Middle-earth painting tutorial. Before we get cracking on this lovely model, I just want to thank all of my supporters on Patreon. I've just sent out some goodies to you all as a thank you for everything you do. And if you want to join in and get in on the freebie action, head to patreon.com/battlegames in Middle-earth. Now, as you can see, from today we're tackling a fantastic Forgeworld display piece of Thorin and Azog's duel on the ice at the end of the Battle of the Five Armies. And as you can see, it's got some sort of fiddly bits in it. The ice in particular, you've got to line it up exactly right. And I've just dry fitted every single part of this just to make sure that I've got the right blocks in the right spaces and also that we've got Azog and Thorin glued on in the right places, because otherwise it might not fit in properly. And you really don't want that with such a lovely display place. And I've also not glued the two bits of ice together. So there's basically two joining bits on the base, one that slides into the other, basically so you can remove Azog and Thorin and use them in game. So that's exactly what I've done. But let's first get cracking on Azog. The other Azog model, I think, is a bit of a duffer, but this one is pretty damn good, I must say. So we'll focus on him, and then we'll paint Thorin in another video. So we start with bolt gun metal. That's also lead belcher in the new GW paints, and basically you just go around every single little piece of armour and just give it a nice thin layer of bolt gun metal or lead belcher. And to be honest, I tend to just be quite generous with the layer, the first layer. I water it down a little bit. You can see me poking in the paint pot in the background there a little bit, but I'm just getting a nice even coverage over this black undercoat for the whole of the model. Basically just need to get plenty of pointy bits, and there's plenty of metal on this guy, so don't you worry, we'll make sure we make a good job of it. We don't want to be making a gundabad job of this, now do we? Yes, that's right, the puns return. Apologies for moving it out of the shot there slightly, but we return now onto Warp Lock Bronze. And with that, I just tend to paint the chain of the flail here. I've gone with the stone flail as an option, mainly because the other Azog model, which is a bit of a duffer, has the sort of mace thing, so I want to have a bit of difference here. Then I highlight that with Screaming Bell, which is very similar to the old brass paint. I just kind of highlight it and dry brush the whole of that chain there. Now, with a wash of Nuln oil, I just wash the whole of the armour all over the body, just to deepen those darknesses of the crevices in the sharp, pointy armour. And I think I used the gloss version just to keep that shine on the armour as well. Now, I add a Seraphim Sepia wash. Now, I could have just done Agrax Earthshade all over the model, but I decided basically, originally I wanted it dark black, and then I just wanted to add a bit more dirt and grime, but not too much. I feel like he has good cleaners or something on his armour, so I wanted to add a bit of dirt, add a bit of dust, but not too much. Then I mix together Cadian Flesh Tone and Nurgling Green and get to work on his lovely flesh. Now, Azog's flesh is basically pure white in the film, along with his white warg. He's basically completely pale white, and he has that kind of digital, horrible, sickly pale white look. So you kind of have to invent something that doesn't look too flat, because the white just looks a bit white, to be honest, in the film. And I've seen some versions of Azog which have been painted up in pure white, and if I'm honest, it doesn't look great. So I mixed together this green kind of tint to the skin, especially for this base coat, just to make it have a bit more, well, not life, because that's not the right word for his skin tone, but to give it a bit more grimy, a bit more, I don't know, a bit more depth to the skin. So that's what I did, a mixture of Cadian Flesh Tone and Nurgling Green, which makes a nice little sickly pale tone, which will build up from and eventually do reach the white. Now, using Mournfang Brown, I just paint his boots. Now, this is something I don't often do, to be honest. I don't often paint shoes, and that is because they're usually hidden by tufts or grass or whatever, and it's hardly the focal point of a model. But here, because of the ice that he's standing on, there's going to be nothing on that base of ice, so it's just going to be a pretty flat base. So I wanted to make sure the boots were looking good, so I did a bit of a brown base coat on them. Then with Dryad bark, I get to work on the kind of loincloth that's made out of dwarven heads. Would you believe it? On the other version of Azog, there's basically no dwarven heads really in the skirt, but here you can really see the detail here. So I paint all of that in Dryad bark as well as the straps on the belt. And because I just noticed it, I should have done this earlier when I was doing the chain, but Warp Block Bronze on the kind of metal bits underneath his belt, and I highlighted it again with Screaming Bell, just to give that brassy tone to the base. And I actually added a wash of Druchii Violet or purple ink here to all of the waistcoat slash dwarven head skirt, just to add a bit of different colour. Now, with Talarn Sand, I work up some fur colours. Now, it's a bit furry underneath his boots. It's winter after all. So using Talarn Sand, I painted those and then I'll wash it later. Now, you can see our little pyramid of inks and colours there. This is just another layer of flesh tone. It's basically the same as the flesh tone I did earlier, but with added bleached bone or whatever bone colour you have. So I think it's Ushabti bone is the modern one. And with that, I just start highlighting the muscles. He's got a very, very toned muscles on the model, so it's actually very easy to pick them out. It's definitely the easier of the two models to paint in this kit. But using a bit of extra bone in there, I just slowly start building up that pale white tone and working away, leaving some of the greenish tint in the recesses of his muscles there. As you can see, it's not an easy model to paint, especially when you've got a camera, so apologies about the focus, but there's lots and lots of different parts of skin on this model, so just make sure you don't miss any little armpits or anything like that, although I don't think armpits are in there. Then with Seraphim Sepia, I just give the fur that we painted earlier in Talarn Sand a little bit of a wash, just to add a bit of depth again. And I also paint the boots in Seraphim Sepia. Again, I probably could have done a darker one, but I wanted to keep it nice and bright. Now, back to the skin again. The same mixture of colours, now 4 of them, just adding a bit of white to the mixture. So it's becoming a bit of a hodgepodge of paints at the moment, but actually it really works, and it's slowly building up to that white skin tone that you really expect for Azog. You can see him there, just on the back of my hand. Now, using Ironbreaker, I essentially sharpen his armour, so it's quite dark and brown and mixed into a very dark metal at the moment, but with an edge highlight of the metal bits, especially for a hero model like this. It's kind of essential, and it makes those armour plates look really, really dangerous, really sharp, and really cool, actually. I'm really loving the armour on this model, and also I'm painting over the little spike out of his hand instead of his left hand, and also any of the other little metal bits on his greaves, on his legs, and things like that. What you can do here is add some extra little strokes on the sort of perpendicular line. So you've got your edges and then some tiny little strokes above and beyond the edges. I didn't do that just to make it look a bit sharper and make it look as if he's buffed it up a bit. But that's something that if you really want to go the extra mile, then you could easily do that. So you have a flat line and then 3 vertical lines coming off it. With the highlight of the fur, I basically just added a bit of bleach bone and Talarn Sand to the skin mixture to highlight it up. Not too much, but just highlighted that with that. Then with Gorthor Brown, I go back to the Dwarven waistcoat, which had since been highlighted in purple, and just add it with Gorthor Brown and highlight it, bring it an extra layer up, and there's also some other leather straps kicking about the model, which I highlight in that as well. Now you can see I go back here with a bit of metal, a bit of chainmail just to neaten some things up and catch the strap on the belt. Now with Cadian Flesh Tone and Gorthor Brown, I return to that dwarven face skirt, and I just highlight them a few different layers there just to keep it nice and sparkly. With Vermin Brown or Skag Brown in the new paints, I just go back to those boots and highlight them and just give them a kind of orangey leathery look. I think actually it gives it a bit of warmth, and although it might not look good right away, I certainly don't think it looks amazing at the moment. And once you've got the icy base, it does divide it up and give a bit of warmth. Now with Abaddon Black, or Abaddon, or however you pronounce it, I just go to the the straps of the boots and any other little straps and do them in black. With white, I go back to the skin, and this is that final highlight, just to really brighten up Azog's skin tone. He is the White Orc after all, and I just only really pick out the fine details on the edges of his skin and on the nose and the peaks of his muscles, all that sort of stuff. And I don't use a lot, but it does really brighten the model up. There you go, you can see that in real time there, just focusing in and out. You can see where the highlights have really picked it up now, especially on the skin, the armour, and even that dwarven waistcoat there of the dwarf faces. Now, using Fulgrim Pink, which I don't think I've ever used before, and Evil Sun Scarlet, I just make up a mixture, and I water it down nice and watery, so it's basically a wash, and I do the scars. Now, you can't necessarily see them straight away, but actually there are little scars engraved into his arms and onto his face, and all these sorts of places, which are just, I think, meant to be when he's been scratched by the wargs and things like that. But you can see there now, it just adds a little bit of kind of, as if the tissue's been softened and damaged in some sort of way, that he's got some nasty red lines on it, but there you go. Then, with Storm Vermin Fur, I paint the brick that's hanging off the end of his stone flail, and then I highlight that again with a mixture of Storm Vermin Fur and Dawnstone, and a final edge highlight on that with Dawnstone itself. Nice, straightforward rock. I don't go to any special lengths to this. I suppose you could put a little wash of green or something like that on it, but that's the general gist. Now with Rust Grey, I start painting that base. So essentially, this is ice, and ice is obviously see-through or white. So this is a difficult one to do, but I start with Rust Grey, and then I wash it in this Drakenhalf blue wash, and then I highlight that again with Fenrisian Grey. So we're slowly building back up to that white and having some texture with the blue shades underneath it. And then final highlight in Fenrisian Grey and white mixed together. Now this, I kind of dab it on, almost dapple it on the base, because I don't want it to look too flat, so I add a little bit of texture here. And then using PVA glue, I basically stick a load of bicarbonate of soda, kind of dusting. And then there you go, it's done. Azog is finished. The White Warg, and actually he looks really, really cool on the base with Thorin, who you'll see here in a second. And I will be painting Thorin. I'll be painting him for you in the next video. So do subscribe to the channel, and you'll be able to see the next video in the next 24 hours, I hope. With that in mind, thank you very much for watching, and if you do like what you see, support the channel on Patreon and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.